Part 18. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 173. Old man who stared at his youngest son bitterly, wishing he had never been born, and he would not be willing to spend the 17 taels of silver after he got it, so he would give it away before it was warmed up. Old man who was not reconciled, he had never seen so much silver in his life, he gritted his teeth and said, "Your family's rice seeds are not worth so much even if they are made of gold." The ant sneered and said, "Your wine is still made from sorghum. Why is it worth 17 taels? Isn't my rice more expensive than your sorghum?" Hearing this, all the onlookers outside understood that after all Malu was unwilling to be coerced by the Hu family for the 17 taels of silver, and this was revenge. People outside are happy to see it, but after Hu man became a small flag, their life will be much more difficult. The Hu family is not as selfless as the Mu family. I didn't think it before, but after comparing with the Hu family, I realized how beautiful the previous life was. In the past, when Mu she was a small banner, when it came to doing farm work, each family in the village did it. The Mu family didn't even occupy the cattle and farm tools. One of the reasons why she can quickly convince the public. But it was Hu man, the Hu family took up a lot of the 5 cows. Last time they planted rice seedlings, they allocated strong labor from each household to plant rice seedlings for their family first. All of a sudden occupied 5 cows. I dare not speak in front of the Hu family, but who doesn't speak ill of the Hu family behind their backs? Even if they knew that Hu man was innocent in the barracks, they would be scolded over and over again by the villagers. Seeing that the Mu and Hu families were facing each other again, and the Hu family was obviously going to suffer, everyone yelled at the Mu family. "Cheer up!" In fact, someone whispered, "What are you afraid of? The Hu family is not the most powerful in this village, but the Mu family is suppressing it." That's right, it's not enough for Brother Mu to say that Hu man is a small flag. If the Hu family and the Mu family become enmity again, maybe Brother Mu won't keep his promise, and he will kill Hu man directly. If you want me to say that Brother Mu is pedantic, the Hu family was wrong in the first place, and they all bullied his daughter. Why do you keep your promise and just throw the Hu family out? So you can only farm the land, and Brother Mu can be a popular person in front of the little general. He has morality and bottom line, and they are all like you. After that, who will listen to Brother Mu? There is arguing outside, and there is also arguing inside. Hu Jinshi is the master who will add to the chaos, but the main force of the Hu family, Old Man Hu and Hu Fangji, do not show weakness, but insist that the rice in that part of the land is not worth 17 taels of silver. Mrs. Hu and Mrs. Zhang helped each other from time to time. Mrs. Hu Gui straightened his neck and refused to admit his mistakes. Mrs. Malu was aggressive since he was a child, and they were evenly matched against each other. Mu Yangling frowned. Ziyuheng squeezed in from the outside, and said to Mu Yangling, "Cousin, Auntie wants me to come and have a word with you." Ziyuheng yelled these words, not only Malu stopped and turned her head, but the Hu family also stopped talking and looked over. Ziyuheng said loudly, "My cousin said that Uncle Hu's herding cattle and gnawing crops is against the law and obstructing Nangsang, so she asked my cousin to go directly to Zonki. Quarrels, right and wrong, let the law decide. Uncle Hu's mistake is not too big. Most of the time he spent a few months in prison as a coolie will make up for it. Our family will have to pay twice as much for the rice they lost in the future. It is written in the law." Ziyuheng glanced at them, then lowered her voice and said, "My cousin said that our family is not short of money, so please don't embarrass the Hu family, just follow the law." The faces of the Hu family suddenly turned pale and white. Immediately Malu was in a hurry. She gave them a sneer look and said, "Indeed, we don't want the 17 taels of silver, we will send it directly to the official, and let the official judge it," she said, and pulled Mu Yangling. Ziyuheng is leaving. With a pale face, Hu Gui knelt under the old man whose feet, hugged his legs and said, "Father, I don't want to be imprisoned, and I don't want to be a coolie. Can the coolie son of the court come out alive? The old man Hu shook his hands, and Hu Fangshi had already stepped forward to stop Malayashi, crying and begging, "My good sister, please don't send me to the official, it's such a big deal, we just need to pay more money, how about that, how about 5 taels? Malayashi pushed her hand away, and said with a sneer, "Our Mu family has no shortage of money, and we keep it for you to brew." Hu Fang gritted his teeth, knelt down in front of Malu, wiped his tears and said, "Good sister, I know you hate my family for selling your wine at a high price, but that wine saved your niece and daughter-in-law anyway, even if the wine is not worth it money, because it saves people, right?" That's right, Malayashi had already pushed Mu Yangling and Ziyu Hung away when she was kneeling down, and she also stepped aside. Now when she heard her question, she stood in front of her with a pale expression on her face. Qing raised her face and asked, "But what's the relationship between us? Ever since you moved here, you've been yelling at your old sister. The cows in the flag will let the stones go to your house first, and my family's Aling will go up the mountain order something good. I feel sorry for your grandson who has a disheveled face, and he eats a ball of meat every day. You were sick and almost died in bed, and I brought an old hen from my niece and daughter-in-law to make up for you. Your old sister's so affectionate, I really think you are an old sister, but how do you do it? My family is burning to death, so I just point to a sip of wine to cool down. You have a dark heart, you are still not reconciled to throwing out 17 taels of silver, and forced my family, Aling, to let her father give up Zioki to your son. Are you guilty? Don't call me old sister, listen to you call these 3 words, I'm sick." Hu Fang's face was pale. Malu straightened up and spat viciously at old man Hu, and the onlookers made way for them to leave one after another, and someone couldn't help but whispered, "This is really deserved, typical ungrateful, no wonder Malu is so ungrateful. Hate, I have to hate them too. That's right, the 2 families were so good in the past. The 2 sons of the Hu family often hang out with brother Mu, but now they have completely turned against each other. That's what the Hu family asked for." Old man Hu looked at his younger son with a livid face for a while, then turned back to the house and dug out the 17 taels of silver from the bottom of the kong. "Hurry up and send it. You can't just watch your beloved Yaor die. If you work as a coolie for the Yamen, you will be thin and out of shape in 20 days, and you will die of exhaustion on the construction site in a month and a half." Hu Zhenji looked at Yinzi and gritted his teeth, and said in a low voice, "It's spring now, and there's nothing to do in the Yamen. How can there be any coolies?" Hu Gui stared at her and said, "Sister-in-law said so, let elder brother try it for me." The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 174. It's not your elder brother who herds cattle to eat crops, why should you let your elder brother go, Hu Zhang said dissatisfied. Hu Gui stared at her, it's not the eldest brother, but his son, this cow was originally released by Xiaoan. Don't spout blood, Aling has already said that the field is full of your footprints, and you just knelt and admitted it yourself, otherwise why are you so anxious to send me to the official? Enough, old man Hu patted the top of the kong, and shouted, do you still think the house is not messy enough? The money has already been taken out, so hurry up and send it to the Mu family. Third child, you go back to the house and stay at night. I'll beat you when I'm free. Who told you to drive the cows to her field? Are Malu and Mu Yangling easy to mess with? They're shrews from the whole family. Hu Gui shrank his neck and said, I didn't drive the ox to the field, it did it by itself. At most, he didn't stop him much. Who made the horse Lu always look at him with eyes instead of eyes and nose instead of nose? Well, her eldest granddaughter dared to spit at him when she saw him, but it was considered a kindness for the cows to eat a portion of their rice. Who knew it was against the law? Hu Gui felt wronged. Hu Fangshi had already collected the money, and she didn't dare to delay. She wiped away her tears and hurried to Mu's house. Malayashi took the money from her with a sullen face, and didn't let anyone enter the house, just said bang. The sound shut the person outside. Hu Fang stood for a while before leaving. Zai Yuheng poked her head to look at the silver in Grandma's hand, and asked in a low voice, "Aren't we going to report to the police?" Mrs. Malu nodded her forehead and said, "What a silly girl, it was your cousin who frightened them. If you really want to send them off to the officials, the people in the village should hide from our family and go away from now on, and there is no way to report to the officials. The money is affordable." Mrs. Malu handed the money to Mu Yangling, and sighed, "But even though I got the money back, I still feel uncomfortable. What your grandma who said was so nice, I am too busy here. She will also come to help when she is helping, although sometimes she will say some harsh words, but our family lives better than them, just say it, who would have expected it to become like this?" Xiaolin approached her attentively and pressed her shoulders. "Grandma, don't be sad, we just don't want to play with Grandma Hu in the future." Malu smiled wryly, patted her little hand and said, "You don't understand." But Mu Yangling said, "Xiaolin is right, Auntie, as long as we don't associate with the Hu family in the future, don't be sad, there are so many old ladies and old masters in the village, who do you want to chat with? Why do you have to find the Hu family?" Maliu's old face suddenly darkened, and he patted Mu Yangling and said, "Young boy, what are you talking about, who likes to chat with the old man, who keeps his mouth shut, and when your father comes back, I will tell him to clean up you." Mu Yangling broke down with a smile, threw away the money in his hand and said, "This much money is enough to do many things." But Malu said with a slightly sullen face, "But what about the land in our house? Was it seriously ruined when you went to see it?" "Seriously, the top of such a long seedling has been eaten, and a large area has been stepped on, anyway, I can't survive." Mu Yangling tilted his head and said, "It's only a piece of land, and I don't know what to do, should it be empty? How can we do that? We need to grow weeds. It's getting late today. I'll go with you tomorrow to see if we can raise some. If the rest can't, we can plant vegetables." Shu Wanyang's eyes widened, "But Auntie, our vegetable field is right behind, it's not too small, I planted all the vegetables today. And it's too far away for a vegetable field, right? The vegetables grown there are not for the family to eat, they are sold in the county town. I have been selling rabbits for the past few days and found that the vegetables in the city are also very good, unlike in the town where not many people buy them. The county town is different, and I will ask a lingui to come out to me for the sub-district of the land. I will buy some vegetable seeds and plant them. After 20 or 30 days, I will be able to sell the first crop. I can't make a lot of money. Yes, if you add up a little, you can make a lot of money. Maliu's life is harder than theirs. She knows how to accumulate small money bit by bit." Mu Yangling agreed without even thinking about it. "Then when I go hunting in the mountains, my aunt will collect the vegetables, and I will carry them to the county town for you when I come back. Okay, with you doing the hard work, I don't worry anymore." The land is not very big, and Mu Yangling didn't take much effort to make the field ridge sheet to separate this area, and then loosen the ground, because the mud was still wet, so my aunt planned to wait for the soil to dry up. Vegetables. Malayashi was going home with a hoe on his back, while Mu Yangling went to see his rabbit. Ziyuheng and Xiaolin are sitting on the grass watching the rabbit. Mu Yangling entrusted Ziyuheng with spending money to collect grass. She only needs to go down the mountain to hunt in the morning, do farm work in the morning, clean up the rabbit's excrement and clean the shed in the afternoon, and teach Ziyuheng with an oil lamp at night. Xiaolin can read and write. Although this kind of life is tense and compact, it is full and comfortable. Mu Yangling doesn't know how long this kind of life can last, she can only work hard to accumulate capital for the future while enjoying this comfort. So she is very fond of her own wheat, corn, rice, and rabbits, and she has to look at them every few days. Seeing her cousin coming, Ziyuheng waved happily and rushed over. "Cousin, good news, the Hu family is fighting." "How do you know?" Mu Yangling asked as he sat down on a corner of the grass, waved to Ziyulan and shouted, "Ziyuheng, come here quickly, don't step on the grass, the freshly grown pastures are all being stepped on by you will not grow up." Ziyulan ran over on tiptoe, imitating Mu Yangling and sat beside her, while Ziyuheng squatted on the other side of her and said, "Brother Big Zhuang told me that he came over with grass on his back and gave me. I even went to take a look at it when I was there. I heard that uncle who gave up Zioki's position. Now it's the turn of the son's family at the head of the village. I came here for a fight. I heard that aunt who is arguing to separate the family. I don't know if it has stopped now." Mu Yangling bounced her forehead and said, "Is Hu Laohan called it? Grandpa Hu, be careful that my father heard you." Ziyuheng stuck out her tongue, "I said that in front of my cousin." Mu Yangling didn't hit her again, but said, "We have to respect the old and love the young. Some things can be said in front of our own people, but we can't say them outside, you know? Well, who told us that we are young?" Ziyuheng also sighed disappointedly, "I don't know when I will grow up." "Soon, I will grow up in 5 or 6 years." Mu Yangling rubbed her hair, got up and said, "I'm going to clean the rabbit house, you guys rest, let's leave the Hu family's affairs alone. Well, it's all over anyway, and it's impossible to reconcile in the future." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 175. Mu Yangling's cognition obviously did not get the support of Mu Shi and Hu Man, because Mu Shi and Hu Man were really good friends. Mu Shi made it very clear that it was the old man who took advantage of others' danger, not Hu Man. That's why he went to Chi Heiran to tell Chi Heiran not to embarrass Hu Man, and even interceded with the general banner to which they belonged, asking him to take care of him. Hu Ful. Although Hu Man was forced to take over Zioki's position at the beginning, he was always very uneasy, and with his wife's words, he was even more repelled by it. His wife asked someone to send a message to him, saying that his family had recently taken advantage of his becoming a small flag to occupy a lot of resources in the flag. This is common in other flags, but it doesn't mean that Hu Man will agree. Hu Man thought of what his wife cried to him, "You became a small flag, what benefits did we get? It's all the benefits of uncle, sister-in-law and third uncle, but you and I recited all the infamy. Now we too I don't have any children yet, wouldn't it be more troublesome to have children? I don't even dare to have children now, you have to make up your mind, we can't be that ungrateful person, relying on father's momentum, we have to offend the whole village if it's not enough, they are popular and hot in the village, and no one can bully them, but if you are in the army, you will go to the battlefield if you don't keep them together." This is the main reason why Hu Jinshi has always been against offending Mu Shi and the villagers. For her, her husband is the most important thing. If he dies, then there is really nothing left. And it was this sentence that moved Hu Man. Hu Man found Mu Shi without telling his family, saying that he was not qualified for the position. Naturally, it is impossible for Mu Shi to go back to serve as Zioki. He is now Chi Heiran's confidant, and his salary and future are much better than Zioki's. Seeing that Hu Man insisted not to do this job, he took him to see the president. Flag. It is stated that their small flag is assigned by the general flag. Zonki was going to be angry, but when he heard that Zioki could be appointed by him, he restrained his anger, asked Chi Hao for instructions, and then directly gave the position of Zioki to Sunda of the Sun family. Old man who didn't know that Zioki's candidate had changed again when people from the Sun family came to pull the cows. The second daughter-in-law went to the military camp, and Zioki changed when he came back. Old man whose intuition was wrong. Let out. Human, who had unburdened himself, took half a day off and asked Mushi to drink in the city and make amends. Old man who turned backwards in anger. In this way, all the benefits he gained from offending the Mu family will be lost. Why did he spend such effort in the first place? Even his wife blamed him, the old man who was going to be strong for a lifetime. How could he bear this tone? He was going to divorce Hujinshi immediately, and he wanted to call Human back to beat him up. Human guarded Hujinshi, and when he saw his father being unreasonable, he yelled, "Split up! If you can't survive this day, then split up. I don't want anything. This is the head office, right?" Human threw away the stick he had snatched from him, looked at his parents and brothers with red eyes, and said, "I will not stop with Jin, I will live with her for the rest of my life. If you can't live with me, then break up." Old man who pointed at him and was speechless, and it took him a long time to spit out two words, "Nizai." Human turned to look at his father, wiped his face, saw that his hands were covered with blood, and said, "Father, you said I am a rebellious son, so I am. Anyway, you and your mother have been partial to your mother since you were a child, and you have favored your elder brother. Partial to the third brother, I have endured it in the past. You asked me to give up all the land to them, I also gave up. Asked me to serve as a soldier, I also went, and asked me and the Jin family to give up the house to the third brother to prepare for a new house. They've all moved, what else do you want?" Hu Fang frowned, looked at him and said, "What are you talking about? We gave birth to you and raised you. Mother, do you think I have been a cow and a horse for so many years, and I died for you again, and now I am going to serve as a soldier for the family to pay off?" Human looked straight at his mother, and asked word by word, "Do you think it's paid off?" Hu Fang's complexion changed drastically, and he looked at the son who had always been bored like a gourd in a complicated manner. Seeing that they were silent, Human took his wife into the house and said, "Pack up your things, you go back to your mother's house to live for a while, I go back to the barracks, and I will pick you up after 10 days off." "Don't believe me?" Human took out a few hundred coins from his pocket and quietly stuffed them into her hand, whispering, "I saved this secretly, you keep it." Hujinshi looked at him with red eyes, lowered his head and said, "Then I'll go back and wait for you." Human nodded. When the old man saw his son sending Hujinshi away, his face became even more ugly. He pointed at him and said, "If you want to separate the family, unless I die and step over me, no one is allowed to separate the family." Human just stared at him in a daze. The old man who felt a little chilling for no reason. He held his head and regretted. If he can keep it in his heart, the second son will still just work hard, and his family is still the second proudest person in the village after the Mu family, and he is always pointed at wherever he goes now. I thought it was an opportunity, but who knew it was a fire pit? Old man who regrets it? Human grabbed Hujinshi and was about to leave, but Hudian and Huzanshi hurriedly grabbed them. Hudian pressed his second brother's shoulder and said in a low voice, "Do you really want to have a relationship with the family? No matter how good you are with him, can it be better than our flesh and blood brothers?" Human looked up at him with red eyes, "Brother, I just want to ask you, if I die, will you support my wife and children? Don't let my sister-in-law lose them. Tell me the truth." Looking into Human's eyes, Hudian opened his mouth, but after all he didn't say anything. Human said in a low voice, "I knew it a long time ago, father and mother are biased, if I really die on the battlefield, then their mother will die. I don't blame you, big brother, but you will think about your own small family, and so will I. The annual income is in the hands of you and your father. You are the eldest son of the family. Dad will not lose you if you lose. The third child is Yaoer, you have a mother to plan for him, he doesn't have to worry about anything, but I am different, I have to kneel down and beg my mother if Jin is sick and needs to take side effects. This kind of life must be changed, or I will let it go." Kaoxi village also has such an example of family division. I am not afraid of being rejected by my family and clan. If I die, their mothers will not be able to survive. You don't have a child yet, Hu Fang shouted unbearably, you blame us for being biased, why didn't you say that you have a wife and forget your mother? You have no children with her now. Mom, it's not that we don't have children, it's that we dare not have children. Hu Fangshi looked into Er's eyes, his words were stuck in his throat, unable to speak any more, he could only watch helplessly as the couple left with a burden on their backs. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 176. Xu Wanyang rubbed her eyes and unfolded the embroidered screen. The whole family was stunned. Mu Yangling drooled and asked with sparkling eyes, Mom, can I also learn this skill? Couldn't help reaching out to touch it. Malayashi slapped her hand off and said, don't touch it, it's all silver. Xu Wanyang pursed her lips and smiled, and said to her daughter, it is impossible for you to learn double-sided embroidery. You are already very happy if you can learn the most basic embroidery method. Xiaolin is very talented. Although she is old a little bit, but if you start studying hard today, you will still be able to achieve something in the future. Xiaolin looked at her cousin excitedly, held her sister's hand tightly and asked, can I really succeed in my studies? Xu Wanyang smiled and nodded, with your talent, as long as you practice hard, it shouldn't be difficult. Malayashi also became a little excited, and pushed Xiaolin in front of her, then Wanyang, you usually guide this child more, she will have a guarantee of life after she can learn a craft. Don't worry, Auntie, I will teach her well. Mu Yangling stuck out his tongue and said in a low voice, you're only 7 years old. Xu Wanyang glared at her daughter, do you think they are all like you? My mother started to learn stitching at the age of 3, and started to take needles at the age of 4. She studied with her husband for 11 years and only just started. Now she can embroider the screen because of I haven't lost my effort in the past 10 years, you are 10 years old, and you can't even sew a piece of clothes well. Malayashi also said, Aling, you don't need to learn the fine work of embroidery, but you must know how to make clothes, otherwise, who will make you small clothes in the future, and you will ask others to do the clothes for you in the future? Shame or not? I know my aunt, I will definitely practice needlework diligently, and strive to become a teacher as soon as possible. Malayashi and Xu Wanyang looked at her in disbelief. Xu Wanyang put away the embroidery and handed it to her daughter, saying, okay, you can take it to Fukan to exchange for money, and I will find a way to embroider it later. Mu Yangling put it away with a smile, Mother, how much can this pair of embroidery sell for? Xu Wanyang said, if it is worth at least 500 taels in the south, when the frame is installed, the price will depend on the price of the frame, but if it flows out of the Xu family, it will be even more expensive. Xu Wanyang smiled slightly, but in Xingzhou Prefecture, if you can sell 100 taels, that's pretty good. The aunt was speechless and said, this is also very high. You have only been embroidering for 2 months, and you can earn 100 taels of silver in 2 months. If I can earn half of your 2 months in my life, it is not bad in my heart, I am even more enthusiastic about Xiaolin learning this craft. Xu Wanyang patted Xiaolin's head and said nothing. In fact, what she wanted to teach Xiaolin was another kind of double-sided embroidery, which was much simpler than this one. After all, this was a family heirloom of the Xu family, and she did not want to spread it out. Xiaolin's aptitude is not bad, as long as she works hard, she might be able to become a master in 10 or 20 years. As my aunt said, her life will be guaranteed by then. Of course, it is impossible to sell such a good pair of embroidery in the county. Mu Yangling decided to go to Fukan tomorrow. Since he is going to Fukan, he can't just take the embroidery. Mu Yangling decided to go to the mountains today to see if he can get it. Some big prey were dragged to Fukan. Mu Yangling told her Aunt Ziyuheng to let them see the rabbit house, and she went into the mountain with a bow and arrow and a basket on her back. All the rabbits in this area have been wiped out, and only a few sporadic ones are left. Mu Yangling goes into the mountains every morning to hunt some rabbits and pheasants for his aunt to sell in the city. Walk. Because the number of rabbits has decreased, the grass on the ground in the forest can sprout green shoots, unlike the ones that were gnawed clean some time ago. Mu Yangling walked in while paying attention to the traces on the ground, and stopped when he heard the sound of ho-ho. Mu Yangling stepped lightly, probed in quietly, and saw a big wild boar behind with 6 small ones in the arch. The ground is a piece of wild yam. Mu Yangling looked at the wild boars for a while, pondered for a while, and decided to eliminate the harm for the people, lest these wild boars run down the mountain and harm the crops. Mu Yangling pulled out the bow and arrow on his back, thought for a while and then put it down, stepped back to a place where the wild boar couldn't detect it, and began to tear the dry vines on the tree. Mu Yangling pulled down the vine, rubbed it, and cut it into pieces, then put down the basket and walked in. The family of wild boars is still there, happily eating yams. When the big wild boar heard the movement and raised its head and raised its front hooves to be on guard, Mu Yangling's fist had already arrived. She directly punched the big wild boar into the air, and when the wild boar flew out and hit a tree, Mu Yangling was gorgeously knocked unconscious. When the little wild boars saw this, 2 of them turned around and ran away, while the remaining 4 rushed towards Mu Yangling aggressively. Mu Yangling kicked one and flew the other with his right hand, grabbed the front leg of the 4th with his left hand and tied it with the vines in his hand. Mu Yangling then went to chase the 2 little wild boars that ran away, and when she came back with those 2, all the wild boars here were still unconscious except for the unfortunate little wild boar that didn't faint. Mu Yangling felt that their struggle made transportation more difficult for him, so he slapped the 2 that were still awake and knocked them out. A group of wild boars were dealt with without a single drop of blood. Mu Yangling thinks this method is very good. As long as you master the strength and method, you will no longer be afraid of the bloody smell attracting wild animals when hunting in the future, and you can keep the freshness of the prey to the greatest extent. Mu Yangling packed up the usable yams on the ground and threw them into the back basket, and then stuffed the little wild boar into the back basket, but although the little wild boar was still small and the back basket was big enough, it could only hold 4 of them. After thinking about it, I hung the other 2 on my waist, and then I picked up the basket and carried the big wild boar to go out of the mountain. Fang Dazhuang, who was cutting grass at the foot of the mountain to sell to Ziyuheng, saw Mu Yangling coming out of the mountain with a wild boar on his back. He swallowed and said, "If only I were Uncle Mu's son. Then I can inherit Mu Yangling uncle's divine power." Don't dream, Mu Bowen is also Uncle Mu's son, but he looks like a little chicken. If you become Uncle Mu's son, you might be the same as Bowen. Only Mu Yangling in the Mu family inherited Uncle Mu's legacy. Divine power. Then I'm happy too. With such a big sister, why don't you have meat every day? Fang Dazhuang drooled as he looked at the wild boar on Mu Yangling's shoulder. Mu Yangling took the things home, fearing that the wild boar would wake up and struggle, so he tied its hooves and locked it in the shed where the rabbits were kept. When the big wild boar woke up at night and howled, Mu Yangling went in and slapped it, knocking it out again. Mu Yangling touched its neck, stood up and said to the family members who were watching outside, "It's okay, it's still alive, and I definitely won't wake up tonight, everyone can sleep well." Xu Wanyang looked at the wild boar's neck, then at her daughter's hands, and picked up the baby with difficulty and went back to the house. The twins waved at their sister excitedly. The aunt closed her mouth and went back to the house. The remaining 3 little stars looked at Mu Yangling. "Ziyuheng, cousin, you are amazing," she will follow her cousin closely in the future. "Ziyulan, cousin, you are amazing," the cousin seemed to have photographed her like this last time, so she didn't get dizzy. "Bowen, sister, you are amazing, when he grows up, he will marry a wife and have a daughter like his sister." The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 177. Mu Yangling got up and looked outside. Seeing that the sky was still dark, he fell down and fell asleep again. He only lay down for a while before he heard the bell from the county town. It's time to open the city gates. Mu Yangling opened her eyes with difficulty, got up and washed. She was going to Fukan, and she had to leave quickly if she wanted to come back before night. Mu Yangling tied the unconscious wild boar to the cart, and when her aunt saw that she had tied up the 5 little piglets, she quickly stopped her and said, "Such a small wild boar is not enough to fit between the teeth, so let's leave it alone. Well, I'll take care of you later." "Don't." Mu Yangling tied up the wild boar and said, "How can these wild boars be so easy to feed? They are very unique. If you want to raise pigs, I will go to the county to bring you 2 piglets back later. Let's sell these few. Don't worry, people in the city like to eat this kind, maybe it's worth more than that big wild boar." Mu Yangling tied up the things, wrapped the embroidery in oiled paper, carefully put it in the bag and carried it on his chest. Xu Wanyang was already helping her bake pancakes in the kitchen. Seeing that Mu Yangling was about to get up, she hurriedly wrapped 7 or 8 pancakes in oiled paper and stuffed them into her arms. "You can eat on the way, and there are bamboo tubes on the cart. You have filled the rice soup, drink it when you are thirsty. Be careful on the road, don't cause trouble when you get to Fukan, and come back if the price is not satisfactory, and you are not allowed to argue with others." "Mother, don't worry, when did you see me being bullied?" Mu Yangling waved at them, picked up the cart and pushed it away. Xu Wanyang just stood at the door and watched her back disappear before turning around. "My aunt didn't have to go to the county town to set up a stall today, so she thumped her back and said, 'I'll rest for a while too, and when the sun comes out, I'll take Ziyuheng to weed the corn.'" Xu Wanyang thought for a while and said, "Auntie, let me take the child with you." Malu was taken aback, shook his head and smiled and said, "What are you going to do? The 2 children are not enough for you to work? You can't do the work with them. You might as well stay at home and teach Xiaolan how to embroider flowers. The embroidery thread at home is used up, and now it is enough for Xiaolan to practice. Let's talk about it when Aling buys it back tonight." Xu Wanyang said, "Bosi and Kijia are very well behaved, and when the time comes, put them on the field. We can see it when we work in the field." "Auntie, I can't do other farm work, but I can still weed." Mrs. Malu clapped her hands and said, "It's not that you don't know how to do farm work, but it's hard enough to take care of children. You still have to take care of 2, take care of the children, and do housework. Take time out to embroider. My family was busy with farm work before, and I really couldn't spare anyone to help you. If you are free now, you should rest for 2 more days. Otherwise, when Aling comes back from Fukan, you will start embroidering again. You have to start to ridge the wheat, weed the corn, and top dress the wheat, and you don't have time to spare. You are still young, so you can't burn yourself out." Mrs. Malu persuaded Xu Wanyang in a low voice, and Mu Yangling also arrived at the gate of the county seat, and walked directly from Mingshui County on the way to Fukan. Because she was in a hurry, she walked very fast, and the scooter made a creak sound. Mu Yangling was alone on the whole road. After walking for a long time, he saw a few people intermittently. Everyone had goods on them, or someone was driving a donkey cart. Obviously, they were all going to Fukan for business. The driver of the donkey cart saw Mu Yangling catching up, glanced at the things on her cart, raised his whip and said, "Little girl, isn't your thing light? Do you want to take the donkey cart? I threw the rope over to you. Hey, how about going to Fukan for 20 wen?" Mu Yangling shook his head, "Thank you uncle, I can pull it myself." The man looked at the things in her car, then at her body, shook his head and said, "When are you like this? When will you be able to reach Fukan? Don't let such a small body be crushed." Mu Yangling's footsteps paused, and he sped up to overtake the donkey cart. He took the time to turn around and shouted at him, "Uncle, you have to speed up too. If you can't catch up with the morning market, at least you have to get there before lunch." After finishing speaking, Haha laughed, speeded up and left. The man watched Mu Yangling go away in a daze, and it took him a while to come back to his senses. Mu Yangling arrived in Fukan before 10 o'clock, and she directly dragged the wild boar to Jufulu, the largest restaurant in Fukan. Mu Yangling knocked on the side door, and said to the guy who opened the door, "My family got fresh wild boar meat, I wonder if you will accept it or not." The man looked at Mu Yangling up and down, and asked, "Are you from Uncle Mu's family?" Mu Yangling nodded, took out 5 cents from his pocket and gave it to him, saying, "My father's name is Mu Shi, and he said that he had agreed with your shopkeeper before, please tell me." The clerk glanced at the things on her cart, shook his head and said, "I'm afraid you won't be able to sell these things. Our restaurant has a regular supply. The reason why my shopkeeper promised your father is because your father was with you last time the little general came to have dinner together, and our shopkeeper responded in the face of the little general." Mu Yangling said, "Whether the shopkeeper is false or sincerely wants to buy my prey, I always have to ask him. If he doesn't buy it, I will go to another place. Is the prey you shot out afraid that no one will buy it? Brother, ask for me." The guy thought about it for a while, then nodded and said, "That's fine, then I'll ask for you. Whether it will work or not depends on your luck." Jufulu is a restaurant jointly run by He Yuanwai, Sun Yuanwai and Wu's Hifu. It is considered the largest restaurant in Xingzhou Prefecture. Except for buying from the He family and the Sun family's Zhuangzi, they also have the rest. A regular buyer, so the shopkeeper frowned slightly when he heard that someone from the Mu family had brought prey. Last time in front of Chi Heiran, he didn't want to refute the other party's face. During this time, when no one delivered the goods, he thought that the Mu family knew about it. Unexpectedly, he still delivered it. Thinking that there is no need to offend Chi Heiran for such a trivial matter, he called the second shopkeeper and said, "Go and see what she sent, just give me some money, and if she asks about the next delivery, just say we already have a supplier, so give her some bounty." The second shopkeeper agreed, but was stopped by a waiter halfway through the walk. "Boss, there is something wrong with the pork that was just sent to the kitchen, and the chief chef is getting angry." The second shopkeeper frowned, waved to the clerk, and said, "Go to the side door and send the delivery man away, just say that we don't have any shortage of ingredients today, just put it nicely, and don't offend anyone. I'll go to the kitchen to have a look." The clerk agreed and ran to the side door. Mu Yangling was resting on the cart. When he saw the clerk coming over, he hurriedly stood up. "But Ms. Mu, I'm really sorry. We have enough ingredients today. I'm afraid we won't be able to buy what we sent here. Have you seen the Hongwei restaurant diagonally opposite? That's also a restaurant, so it's not as good as yours. Go there and try." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 178. Chapter 178, Argument. Translator, Atlas Studios. Editor, Atlas Studios. Mu Yangling glared at him before going forward to pick Kijia up to check. When Kijia saw that her sister had returned, she hugged her neck tightly and looked at her with teary eyes. Then, she reached out to point at Chi Heiran and wailed. Surprised that this child could complain at such a young age, Chi Heiran widened his eyes and looked at her. Seeing Mu Yangling look over, he hurriedly explained, "She's saying that I'm playing with her. I'm not a fool, Chi Heiran. If you dare to carry my sister like this again, I'll throw you into the river." Chi Heiran touched his nose and turned to hug Bosi. Bosi was much more refined than Kijia. No matter who hugged him, he would simply sit quietly in that person's arms. Having lost interest after carrying him for a while, Chi Heiran craned his neck to look at the kitchen. "Is your mother done cooking?" After handing Kijia to Ziyuheng to carry, Mu Yangling parked the cart and brought the things back into the house. When she heard this, she said, "More or less I think by the way, where's my father?" Mu Yangling had asked Ziyuheng to call Chi Heiran and the rest over for dinner because she hoped that her father would come back too. "Your father has something to do and isn't in the camp now," Chi Heiran said nonchalantly. Mu Yangling didn't ask further. Xu Wanyang had already raised her voice in the kitchen. "The food is ready, All Ling, quickly call your great-aunt back." Xu Wanyang made fragrant pork. It was her first time making such a grand dish, so she didn't have much confidence. She looked at Chi Heiran and Fan Zijin nervously and asked, "How is it, does it taste okay?" Chi Heiran's mouth was full of oil as he nodded repeatedly. He did not even have the time to say anything. More reserved, Fan Zijin stopped eating and nodded slightly. "It's delicious, Auntie's cooking is superb." Ziyuheng and Ziyulan ate without looking up. Bowen took the time to add, "My mother's culinary skills are the best. My father said that if my sister can learn 20% of my mother's culinary skills, she won't have to worry about getting married." Mu Yangling said, "I'm not worried about getting married now either. No way, everyone outside says that sister won't be able to get married in the future." Great Aunt patted his head and said angrily, "What nonsense are you spouting? Your sister is good looking, talented, and capable. Why can't she get married?" Bowen said aggrievedly, "They said that sister is so powerful and fierce. What if she beat up the husband and in-laws after she gets married?" Mu Yangling said nonchalantly, "I won't marry someone who has such worries. One bet those are the ones who bully their wives after marrying them." Chi Heiran nodded repeatedly. "Only incapable men would consider such things. What are capable men afraid of?" Fan Zijin glanced at Mu Yangling's hands. Thinking about how she had lifted a rockery easily, he couldn't help but shiver and quickly changed the topic. "Did you go to the prefectural capital today? Did you go to the general's mansion?" Mu Yangling nodded. "One sent a small wild boar to the general." Xu Wanyang took the time to ask, "Have you sold the embroidery?" Mu Yangling shook her head. "The shopkeeper from Brocade Workshop is no longer around. He's replaced by a new shopkeeper and that person lowered the price. I've asked other embroidery workshops, and the highest price is only 80 taels." Xu Wanyang frowned slightly. Great Aunt said, 80 taels is already a lot. There's a difference of 20 taels. One brought the embroidery back at most. I'll bring it to Xinyuan Prefecture. Mu Yangling now deeply realized the importance of money and didn't want to back down easily. Anyway, she still had money at home now. When she was free after some time, she could take the time to make a trip to Xinyuan Prefecture. It would only take about 4 days to go back and forth, and she would be able to earn a lot more silver. However, to Madame Malu, Xinyuan Prefecture was too far away. Even she had only come to Mingshui County for the first time because of this escape. Fan Zijin asked curiously, "What embroidery is so valuable?" "It's my mother's double-sided embroidery." After eating, Mu Yangling unfolded the embroidery for Fan Zijin to see. The lights were dim, but Fan Zijin was still stunned. He flipped the two sides over and looked at them repeatedly. In the end, he tapped his hand with his fan and asked, "You want to sell it for 100 taels?" Mu Yangling nodded. "At least." "No problem, I'll take it for 100 taels." Mu Yangling blinked and asked, "What do you want this for?" Fan Zijin said with a smirk, "A gift. The emissary's mother, Mrs. Jean, is celebrating her birthday in a month. Eldest cousin will definitely prepare a birthday gift. Mrs. Jean likes elegant things. This embroidery is exquisite, elegant, dignified, and beautiful. She will definitely like it after I frame it up. Moreover, it was really worth it to settle the gift for Mrs. Jean with less than 200 taels of silver." Unlike Chi Heiran, who did not understand such things, Fan Zijin dabbled in everything, and as such has a shrewd taste. If this thing was framed and sent to the south, it would definitely cost at least 1,000 taels of silver. Fan Zhaijin was very satisfied with this great deal, and Mu Yangling was even happier to see that she could sell the embroidery without going out. This deal was happily concluded. Qi Heiran, on the other hand, saw the smugness in Fan Zhaijin's eyes and saw Mu Yangling grinning foolishly. He opened his mouth but did not say anything. However, the moment they left, Qi Heiran grabbed Fan Zhaijin and said with a straight face, "Zhaijin, did you scam Aling?" Fan Zhaijin said with a serious expression, "What are you talking about? We're friends, why would I scam her?" Qi Heiran looked at him suspiciously. "You're not lying to me, then why are you so smug?" Fan Zhaijin looked at him sincerely. "You're mistaken." Qi Heiran looked at him from top to bottom seriously. In the end, he snorted coldly. "You're lying to me, you're scamming her." Qi Heiran turned around and left angrily. Fan Zhaijin's face turned green. Seeing that Qi Heiran was about to disappear in large strides, he hurriedly chased after him and said helplessly, "All right, I admit that I took advantage of her. This embroidery is worth more than 100 taels, but she didn't lose out. No one in Xingzhou Prefecture will be willing to pay 100 taels." Qi Heiran said stubbornly, "But we're good friends." He waved the things in his hand and said, "She shares with us all the good food and fun things. Didn't you see that she packed more than half of the food for us just now?" Her cousin was glaring at us. "Not only did you not pay the proper amount for Auntie Mu's embroidery, but you even scammed her." "Zhaijin, I know you're smart, but I don't like you taking advantage of your friends." Fan Zhaijin's face also turned cold. Sneering, he said, "I think you're like this because you like her. Other than you, I've never tricked anyone else. I've even tricked eldest cousin before, but I've never seen you say anything. Which of your friends in Linan Prefecture has never suffered a loss under my hands? You'll only laugh and clap when you hear that. When have one ever seen you angry? In the past, I even schemed against eldest cousin with you, and you were so smug about it. When did I see you feel sorry for him? When did Mu Yangling become more important than eldest cousin?" Qi Heiran stammered, How is this the same? Mu Yangling is a girl." "Is it really? Because she's a girl, then what about those well-bred young ladies in Linan Prefecture? You didn't care back then. When did you, Qi Heiran, become so protective of girls?" The two cousins parted on bad terms in the end. The reborn wife is farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 179. Chapter 179, Peace. Translator, Atlas Studios. Editor, Atlas Studios. Thinking that Fan Zhaijin had misunderstood him, Qi Heiran was furious. How could he be someone who valued a lover over his friend? No, how could he like Mu Yangling? Fan Zhaijin was also very angry. He could see that his brother valued Mu Yangling more and more, but he magnanimously didn't mind because the other party was just a young lady. However, Heiran actually flared up at him for Mu Yangling. This was absolutely unacceptable. He had never been angry with him even when it concerned his eldest cousin. How could he be so upset with him because of an outsider like Mu Yangling? This time, Fan Zhaijin kept a straight face and forced himself not to give in first. Qi Heiran waited for half the night, but Fan Zhaijin did not come over to apologize to him. He then went to sleep angrily. When he woke up the next morning, Qi Heiran temporarily lost his memory and did not remember what happened last night. He ran into Fan Zhaijin's room and went to have breakfast with him. Fan Zhaijin didn't sleep the entire night last night and was waiting for Qi Heiran to come and give in to him. Hence, his under eyes were a little dark. Seeing that Qi Heiran had finally come, his expression improved a little and he went to have breakfast with him with a solemn expression. After breakfast, the cousins finally reconciled. Qi Heiran wiped his mouth and said, "I'm going out for morning exercise." Fan Zhaijin nodded with a straight face and said, "I'm going back to the prefectural capital to look for eldest cousin later tomorrow. The trade caravan will start to head south. If you need anything, ask Fei Bai to make a list for me." Alright, 111 get Fei Bai to do it later. After Chi Heiran left, Fan Zijin ate slowly for a while before waving his hand to call for Yanmo. Send 100 taels of silver to the Mu family and bring back the embroidery. Yanmo asked in confusion, what embroidery? He didn't follow his master to the Mu family's residence last night. Fan Zijin looked at him unhappily and said, won't you know when you go, Mu Yangling will give it to you. Yes, Yanmo thought for a moment and said, young master, we don't have so much silver on hand, why don't we take some from fourth young master first? Hasn't fourth young master taken the silver that one gave him? Yanmo smiled and said, fourth young master hasn't gone out recently, so he hasn't had a chance to spend this money, the money's still with you. Fan Zijin pursed his lips and said, then don't give it to him, take out another 20 taels of silver from that amount and add it to the 100 taels to be sent to Mu Yangling, just say that it's the money for the embroidery. Didn't you feel sorry for her? I want to see if you feel sorry for your money or for her. Fan Zijin thought as he gritted his teeth. When Chi Heiran found out that he only had 50 taels left because of this matter, he wanted to die. He cried dramatically as he said, how can you be so heartless? 30 taels isn't even enough to fill the gaps between my teeth, how am one supposed to live? Fan Zijin looked at him calmly and said, don't you feel sorry for Mu Yangling, I'm taking care of her for you. Chi Heiran was dumbfounded. When did I feel sorry for her? I'm just saying that we shouldn't scam her because we're good friends. Fan Zijin snorted and looked at him with a faint smile. Then how can you bear to trick eldest cousin when he's your brother? Yinglian is our female cousin, but I've never seen you pity her. Don't try to act all nonchalant in the end, it's because you like her. Chi Heiran's face flushed red. Nonsense, she's not pretty, why should one like her? One find it strange too, she's not pretty, so why are you always willing to follow behind her? Don't you hate playing with girls the most? You despise them for being noisy and always crying. Mu Yangling is not even as gentle as a girl, let alone beautiful. I really don't know what you like about her. Fan Zijin became angrier and angrier as he spoke. Listening from the side, Fei Bai could not help but defend Mu Yangling. Young Master Zijin, actually, Miss Mu is very beautiful, it's just that she usually wears short clothes and dresses like a boy, so her beauty is hidden. Although Miss Mu isn't gentle enough, she's skilled and strong, she can exchange more than 150 moves with young master. She's also kind-hearted and is willing to sacrifice herself for her pals. I think there's nothing wrong with her. Chi Heiran nodded repeatedly in agreement. The corners of Fan Zijin's mouth twitched as he asked, is this a girl you're describing? Are you guys looking for a pal? Frowning, Chi Heiran said, you look down on women, be careful or I'll tell Aunt and let her beat you up. Fan Zijin looked at him pitifully. You're the only one who believes in my mother's strong personality. If she's really so powerful, one wouldn't have an eldest brother who's 2 years older than me, born from a concubine, and my family wouldn't be in a mess because of the several concubines. I was even so angry with my father that I ran away from home. Mu Yangling looks tough now, but when she gets married and has children in the future, she might not be so powerful. Heiran, don't treat girls as guys, they're not worthy. Chi Heiran's eyes were filled with confusion. But Aunt is clearly very fierce, she even dared to chase after uncle with a knife, which Madam in Xingzhou Prefecture dares to do this. Fan Zijin sneered. So what if she chased after my father with a knife? Doesn't stop my father from visiting the brothel and sleeping with his concubines. She couldn't do anything about it. If other people's wives didn't chase after their husbands all over the house, they would at least preserve the dignity of a legitimate wife and retain the status of a legitimate son for their son. Chi Heiran said unhappily, so why didn't you help Aunt when you know everything? If my mother was still around, I definitely wouldn't allow anyone to bully her, not even my father. Chi Heiran had lost his mother at a young age and had even forgotten what she looked like. However, he still yearned for his mother, so he could never understand Fan Zijin's attitude towards his mother. Fan Zijin naturally knew that this was one of his reverse scales, so he said seriously, who said I didn't help her? If I didn't help her, her life would only be even more difficult, but she never listened to my advice this time. One came to the border with you to help her. Chi Haren's eyes were filled with confusion. He couldn't understand. Fan Zijin pushed his head away and said, "All right, you don't have to understand, you just have to know that one stayed outside to help her." Fan Zijin thought coldly that he was forcing her to make a decision. Did she want her husband or her son? If she wanted her husband, he could only watch her continue to be entangled with her father like this. At most, he would stand up for her outside. However, if she chose her son, she would have her maternal family, schemes, methods, and him. What was there to be afraid of then? Weren't the concubines easy to deal with? However, Fan Zijin was a little disappointed. Until now, other than sending some money, his mother had not said anything. The information eldest cousin had received was that she was still fighting with her father and arguing with him non-stop because of him. But was it really for him? Chi Haren was not sensitive enough to notice what was on his brother's mind. After Fan Zijin kept pointing out that he liked Mu Yangling, he really started to think seriously. Did he really like Mu Yangling? Chi Haren thought about it for a few days and finally came to the conclusion that he liked Mu Yangling, but at the thought of marrying her, he felt strange. What if he didn't want to get married at all? In the end, Chi Haren came to a conclusion. I treat Mu Yangling like a brother, really? Fan Zijin slapped his face before turning around to continue sleeping. He said in a muffled voice, "Why aren't you sleeping at night? The Reborn Wife is farming." Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 180. Chapter 180, Letting Go. Translator, Atlas Studios. Editor, Atlas Studios. When Fan Zijin sent the embroidery to Chi Ziyuan in the prefectural capital, the latter said happily, "One was just fretting over this birthday gift." Chi Ziyuan looked at the embroidery carefully and nodded. "Not bad. Where did you get this from? I was still thinking that if I can't find a suitable gift in Xingzhou Prefecture, one would have to look south. Speaking of which, it's luck one happened to see it when I went to the Mu residence for dinner that day. She tried to sell it at the prefectural capital, but the price offered by the embroidery workshop wasn't suitable, so she didn't sell it. If she sold it that day, we wouldn't be able to buy it at anywhere near this price." Fan Zijin said, "Eldest cousin, this embroidery has to be paired with superior wood. If we can't find such good stuff in Xingzhou Prefecture, why don't we get someone to look for it in the south? When the time comes, we'll get the embroidery workshop to process it when we transport the wood back. There's still a month's time. We should be able to make it in time." Chi Ziyuan glanced at him and knew that he was planning to go south. Don't think that he didn't know what these two brats were up to in the 5th Division. If he hadn't helped cover it up, who did they think they could hide their actions from? Initially, Chi Ziyuan didn't want to mention it, but now, he had no choice but to warn him. "Zijin, you're smart and hard-working, passing the imperial examination at the mere age of 11. Even if your father passes the hereditary privilege to your half-brother, one believe that your future achievements won't be inferior to his or even your father's. That's why one tried my best to hire a teacher for you when you came to me. I no longer count on Haren to study, but one don't want you to neglect your studies." Other than Haren, no one had ever talked to him about his future. His father would only ask him to give in to his brothers, and his mother would only ask him to study hard and not let his step-brothers bully him. Seeing that Chi Ziyuan was serious, Fan Zijin could not help but become serious as well. "I know what you and Haren are planning, but you have to remember that the 5th Division is only for Haren to practice. As for you," Chi Ziyuan sighed. "Actually, I wanted you to stay in the prefecture capital to study, but you two brothers are unwilling to be apart, so one let you come along. Although one agreed to let you be Haren's military advisor, that's only so that you can interact with external affairs. Your focus should still be on your studies. The 5th Division only provides the logistics for the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th Divisions. I don't understand why the two of you are kept so busy that you don't even have time to attend classes." Fan Zijin could not help but blush. During this period of time, He had indeed spent all his time on business and could only spare 2 hours to study at night. Chi Xiuyuan patted his shoulder and said, "In my heart, you're my younger brother just like Heiran, so one hope you can understand what you want and what sort of a future you wish to pursue. Zijin, how long do you think you can be Heiran's military advisor? In terms of marching and formation, you're far inferior to Heiran. In terms of winning the hearts of the soldiers, you're incomparable to Heiran who can get along with the soldiers. You even have to rely on Heiran to support you in the army. You're still young now and only think that it's fun. But what about 10 or 20 years later? Will you continue to think this way when you still have to rely on Heiran in the army, and lack scope for your abilities?" Speechless, Fan Zijin was so agitated that he fell onto the stool. Chi Xiuyuan patted his shoulder and said, "Think about it carefully." When he opened the door, he said, "You can only do these private businesses this once. How can my brother do such a lowly thing?" Fan Zijin watched Chi Xiuyuan leave in a daze. He had always told himself that he was helping Heiran by staying in the 5th division. Almost all of Heiran's logistics were in his hands, and all the supplies in the army could only change hands with his permission. He'd thought that he had helped Heiran a lot, but if not for Heiran suppressing the subordinates in the army, how could he have held onto the supplies in the 5th division? Fan Zijin could not help but feel confused. What path would he take in the future? Or should he study and return to Linan Prefecture to participate in the imperial examination? After passing the village examination and the palace examination, he would slowly rise in the ranks starting from a 7th grade official. The civil officials of the Great Zhou dynasty were indeed very esteemed, but promotion took a very long time. Even if he was talented and smart, he would still have to endure for 3 years before he could become a scholar and enter the 6 departments before the age of 25. Then, he would be assigned to be a 6th grade official outside of the capital. Even if he performed well every year, he would have to be outside for at least 6 years. Then, he would find a way back to the capital to hopefully be promoted to the 4th grade. The 4th grade to the 3rd grade was a huge hurdle. If he was lucky, he might be able to achieve that after enduring 6 years. As for 3rd grade, by then he would be 40 years old. Even if he had the confidence to make it that far, would his father live to see it? As long as he could not surpass his father, he would be bound by him. However, if he did not take the path of a civil servant, he did not fancy martial arts and military law. He did not have other talents, so what else could he do? Fan Zijin returned in low spirits. Chi Heiran casually realized that something was wrong with him and hurriedly asked, "What's wrong with you? Why do you look like you've lost your soul after coming back from the prefectural capital?" Fan Zijin said dejectedly, "I don't know what kind of path one should take in the future." He told Chi Heiran in detail about how lost he felt. Chi Heiran pursed his lips nonchalantly and said, "You and Big Brother are thinking too much. If everyone thinks like you, how many people in the world can be happy? Let's not talk about anything else. Just take the Emperor for example. Wouldn't he be worried to death every day? What if I lose the world? What if my kingdom falls? Should one fight this war or not? What if one do? What if I don't?" He'd be worried to death and wouldn't be able to do anything. One think we should all look forward to the future. If one like to practice martial arts, 111 practice martial arts. If one like to train soldiers, I'll train soldiers every day. If the Jin soldiers attack, 111 fight them back. If you like to study, then study. If you like to do business, then do it. In the future, if you want to take the imperial examination, go take it. Anyway, considering you've always been studying plus you're smart, you can't fare worse than others. If you don't want to take the examination, then forget it. Just follow me. If you're unhappy, go out and have fun before coming back. It's a simple thing, it's your overthinking that makes it too complicated." Frowning, Fan Zijin said, "We have to focus on something. How can we treat every situation the same way?" Chi Heiran tilted his head and asked, "Why not? That's what I do." Fan Zijin choked and said, Flo, is that the same? You could practice martial arts when you were training, and it didn't take up much time. Now that you handed half of the training to the regiment commander of the camp, you have even more time now. You've been running to Chinga garrison more and more diligently these few days. Chi Heiran glared at him. Training soldiers is the job of the regiment commander. One just have to watch and make sure he doesn't make any mistakes. Why should one keep an eye on him? I want to be a general, not a coach. Fan Zijin was silent for a moment, deep in thought. Chi Heiran had already muttered, "Don't you have a lot of time too? You can just hand the rabbit business to the men below, and you don't have to follow the convoy south when they return. You just have to listen to their report and check the account book with Big Brother watching over the supplies in the 5th Division. Our supplies won't disappear for sure, considering there are experienced accountants and the warehouse is guarded. You only need to take a look every once in a while. You can just use the remaining time to do your own things, right?" Chi Heiran looked at him suspiciously. "Don't tell me you don't want to study and are deliberately finding an excuse to skip class." Fan Zijin rolled his eyes at him and said, "Do you think I'm like you?" However, he was already enlightened in his heart. Glaring at Chi Heiran, he thought, indeed, a fool has a fool's luck. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 181. Chapter 181, Follow-up. Translator, Atlas Studios. Editor, Atlas Studios. Fan Zijin did not abandon this business as Chi Ziyuan hoped. Instead, he agreed with Mu Yangling to wait for the trade caravan to return before determining the number of rabbits to be slaughtered. Before that, Fan Zijin hoped that she would raise as many rabbits as possible. After all, he was still unwilling to give up this business that he had worked so hard at for so long. Not only did he have to think of a way to open up business avenues, but he also had to find other business opportunities. Chi Heiran's words enlightened him. Since he could not increase his political capital through studying and the 5th Division, he would accumulate more wealth. At the very least, he would not have to beg for money in the future, right? As for what eldest cousin said about merchants being lowly, he would just pretend not to have heard it. After Fan Zijin's men went south, they would send news back to him every once in a while. When they arrived at the Zhongling prefecture, the steward got someone to send back 2 pieces of black and red sandalwood. When Fan Zijin received it, the corners of his lips curled up slightly. He said to Chi Heiran, who said that business is bad, "At the very least, it's easy to buy what you want. If business is to be mixed with politics, what do you think it will become? A collusion between government and business." Fan Zijin rolled his eyes at him and snapped, "It'd be the imperial merchants, such as the Shen family." Fan Zijin placed the logs properly and stood up. General Yuan was able to lead the army for decades. Even if the imperial court repeatedly suppressed him, he still stood tall. Half of the credit goes to the Shen family, and the Shen family was able to become the #1 imperial merchant in the world from their humble beginnings, largely thanks to General Yuan Heiran. What if eldest cousin also has the Shen family behind him? Then Big Brother will definitely occupy a higher position than General Yuan. He might even become a great general. Fan Zijin's lips curled up. "I think so too, so let's work hard towards this goal. Perhaps eldest cousin can really become the general of the world's troops. Then, I'll be Big Brother's #1 general, and you'll be the #1 military advisor." The 2 cousins fantasized about the future, completely ignoring how impractical it all sounded. Fan Zijin happily took the embroidery and wood to the brocade workshop. Because the item was expensive and it was the Chi family's business, the owner of brocade workshop personally welcomed Fan Zijin and Steward Zhu with the shopkeeper. The sandalwood was wrapped in silk cloth, and there were only 2 pieces. As soon as they opened it, everyone smelled a faint sandalwood fragrance. The boss said with a smile, "This is top quality wood, young master Fan. You are indeed resourceful to be able to find such good stuff in Xingzhou Prefecture. Because emperors and nobles liked to use sandalwood as coffins, and sandalwood took a long time to grow, sandalwood was very rare in the country. Hence, it was very difficult to find this. Even if there were, they were mostly sold to places where powerful people gathered, such as Linan Prefecture. Now that there were war disasters in the north, sandalwood was even rarer. Normally, it would be very good if one could gather enough sandalwood to make a box. Now, he could actually find 2 pieces that were long enough to make a screen. Fan Zijian smiled and said, "I'm just lucky. However, there are only 2 pieces of the sandalwood left, so you have to be careful with them. If anything goes wrong, I won't be able to find any sandalwood here to replace it." The owner hurriedly said, "Young Master Fan, don't worry, our craftsmen are the best in the entire Xingzhou Prefecture. I'll get them to work slower on the sandalwood and make sure that nothing will go wrong. Let's take a look at the embroidery. I'm very curious as to what kind of embroidery is worthy of such wood." Fan Zijian looked at Steward Zhu, who took out the embroidery piece from a box and unfolded it for them to see. As soon as the thing was opened, the shopkeeper's expression turned a little ugly. He recognized that Mu Yangling had brought this thing here previously. After Mu Yangling left, he had asked someone to keep an eye on her. Knowing that she did not sell the item in the end and took it back, he was even less anxious. He thought that the other party would definitely bring it back to Xingzhou Prefecture. When the time came, he would just raise the price slightly. He was not afraid that she would not sell it. Even if she really refused to sell it, he had a way to force her to sell it. Unexpectedly, she actually sold it to the Qi family. Could it be that there was someone backing her? However, she was wearing ordinary clothes that day, and her clothes were even a little dirty. She was a classic example of a poor person with no money. How did she manage to sell the item to the Qi family? Fan Zijian glanced at the shopkeeper and saw the change in his expression. He smiled mockingly but did not expose him. The shopkeeper of Brocade Workshop was not the only one who felt aggrieved because of Mu Yangling. The second shopkeeper of Prosperity Restaurant was also aggrieved because there was a problem with the pork in Fortune Gathering Restaurant that day, causing them to be unable to cook many dishes. It would have been fine if it was any other time, because the customers could just order other dishes. Prosperity Restaurant was not only famous for this. However, that day, Boss Li bought 4 small wild boars from Mu Yangling. He raised 2 of them for the time being and immediately prepared the other 2 into dishes and placed them on the high platform. He announced that they were Red Taste Restaurant's specialty dishes of the day. Red Taste Restaurant and Prosperity Restaurant were opposite each other. The customers who were originally sitting in Prosperity Restaurant and waiting to order food saw this and went to Red Taste Restaurant to join in the fun. Those who weren't loyal patrons of the Prosperity Restaurant felt that eating at Red Taste Restaurant might not be a bad idea. In any case, the dishes they wanted to eat in Prosperity Restaurant were not available that day. Therefore, those who had gone over to watch the commotion did not return. What was even more amazing was that the 2 pots of dishes were bought by 2 tables of guests at a high price in the end. In the end, those dishes were even evaluated in public and were hailed as the most delicious in Xingzhou Prefecture. As for the guests who were attracted, after eating the dishes from Red Taste Restaurant, they felt that the taste was comparable to Prosperity Restaurant. When they were about to go to the restaurant the next day, they saw that Red Taste Restaurant was still lively, so they changed direction and went to Red Taste Restaurant again. On the 3rd day, although some customers were still used to eating at Prosperity Restaurant, many people chose to go to Red Taste Restaurant. Some people even came directly to the Red Taste Restaurant after seeing that there were many people in Prosperity Restaurant. Originally, Prosperity Restaurant had significantly better business than Red Taste Restaurant, but now, both sides were evenly matched. The shopkeeper of Prosperity Restaurant naturally had to find out the reason, so he found Mu Yangling. The little wild boars that had been made into a dish of fragrant pork was sold to Red Taste Restaurant by Mu Yangling. However, The shopkeeper could not find trouble with Mu Yangling because she had come to look for them first and only went to Red Taste restaurant after they rejected her. Although it was an unwritten rule in this area that if one wanted to do business with Prosperity Restaurant, they could not do business with Red Taste Restaurant. However, it was unwritten after all. Even if Mu Yangling did it, they could not do anything to her. Therefore, he could only look for the second shopkeeper. He had asked him to send her away, but since the other party had brought something good, why did he still push her away? The second shopkeeper could not say anything. Since the head shopkeeper clearly wanted to use him as a scapegoat, he did not even have the chance to explain himself. Mu Yangling did not know about these things. Right now, she was busy fertilizing and plowing the wheat fields. Being a huge project, this was not much easier than planting seeds. Old Man Sun brought an oxen over to Mu Yangling and said with a smile, "Although you're strong, you can't be so hard on yourself. Come, this is your family's share. 111 come back to get it in 3 days. The Reborn Wife is Farming." Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 182. The embroidery was sent to Fukan by Fan Zijin to Qi Ziyuan. Qi Ziyuan said happily, "I was still worrying about this birthday gift, so you sent the things here." Qi Ziyuan looked at the embroidery carefully, nodded and said, "That's right, where did you get this thing?" "I was thinking that if you can't find a suitable one in Xingzhou Prefecture, you'll have to look south. Speaking of it, it's just luck. I happened to see her when I went to Mu's house for dinner. She brought her to Fukan, but the price offered by the embroidery workshop was not suitable and she didn't sell it. If she sold that day, it would be worthless for us to buy again." "This is the price," Fan Zijin said. "Brother, this embroidery needs to be matched with good wood. Xingzhou Prefecture can't find such a good thing, so it's better to have someone look for it in the south, and then call it embroidery when it comes back. Workshop processing, there is still a month, it should be too late." Qi Ziyuan glanced at him and knew that he was planning to go south. Don't think he didn't know what these two bastards were doing in the 5th camp. If he hadn't helped cover it up, who did they think they could hide from them? Qi Ziyuan didn't want to say it at first, but now he has no choice but to warn him. "Zijin, you are smart, you study hard, and you were admitted as a scholar at the age of 11, even if your father gave your uncle the place of Anian. I also believe that your achievements in the future will not be inferior to him, or even your father, so when you come to me, I will try my best to hire you a famous teacher. It is impossible to expect Heiran to study, but I don't want you to. I wasted my studies. Except for Heiran, no one has ever talked to him about his future. His father would only let him let his brothers in the family blindly, but his mother would just let him study hard and not let the brothers in the family ride to the end." Seeing Qi Ziyuan's solemnity, Fan Zijin couldn't help becoming serious. "I know what you and Heiran are planning, but you have to remember that the 5th Battalion is only for Heiran to practice, and you," Qi Ziyuan sighed, "actually, I want you to stay in Fukan to study, but the two of you brothers don't want to be separated. I also let you follow. Although I agree with you to be Heiran's military advisor, it is only for you to contact foreign affairs. You should still focus on studying. The 5th Battalion is just the logistics of the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th Battalions. I don't understand why it has so many things that the two of you don't even have time for class." Fan Zijin's face turned red. During this period of time, he had indeed devoted all his time to business, and he was able to spare an hour at night to study. Qi Ziyuan patted him on the shoulder and said, "In my heart, you and Heiran are the same, they are both my younger brothers, so I hope you can figure out what you want and how to go this way. Zijin, how long do you think you can go as Heiran's military advisor? You are far behind Heiran when it comes to marching and deploying formations. You are even worse than Heiran when it comes to buying soldiers' morale. Little, I just think it's fun, but what about 10 or 20 years later? You still have to rely on Heiran in the army, and your ingenuity is completely useless. Can you still think so? Fan Zijian was so emotional that he fell down on the stool for a while, speechless. Qi Ziyuan patted him on the shoulder and said, "Think about it carefully." When he opened the door, he said, "The business you do in private is only allowed once. How can my brother Qi Ziyuan do that? A lowly thing." Fan Zijian stared blankly at Qi Ziyuan leaving. He kept telling himself that he stayed in Wuying to help Heiran. Heiran's logistics are almost all in his hands, and all the supplies in the army have to go through his hands. He thinks he has helped Heiran a lot, but if Heiran was not suppressing in the army, how could he hold the 5th Battalion? Supplies. Fan Zijian couldn't help feeling confused. What path would he take in the future? Or should I study and then go back to Linen Prefecture to take the imperial examination, pass the township examination, the general examination, and then the palace examination, and then slowly work my way up from the 7th rank to the 6th rank? The civil servants of the great Zhou dynasty were indeed very honorable, but the promotion time was also very long. Even if he was talented and intelligent, he could be admitted to Jinshi before the age of 25 and entered the 6 departments. For a junior official of the 6th rank, even if he is excellent in the performance appraisal every year, he will have to be released for at least 6 years, and then find a way to return to Beijing to report on his work. He may be promoted to the 4th rank. From the 4th rank to the 3rd rank is a big hurdle. Just cook up. Sanpan, he was 40 years old at that time. Even if he had the confidence to be a master, would his father see it? And every day he couldn't surpass his father, he was bound by him every day. If he doesn't like civil servants, he doesn't like martial arts and military skills, and he has no talent, so what else can he do? Fan Zijian went back feeling a little depressed. Qi Heiran found out that something was wrong with him carelessly, and hurriedly asked, "What's wrong with you? Why did you go to Fukan and come back like you lost your soul?" Fan Zijian said in frustration, "I don't know what path I should take in the future." He explained his confusion to Qi Heiran in detail. Qi Heiran curled his lips indifferently and said, "You and elder brother think too much. You think like you. How many people in this world can be happy? If you don't talk about anything else, let's talk about the emperor." Thinking, what if I lose the world? What if I become an army of subjugation? I think all day whether this battle will be fought or not. What if it is fought, and so what if it is not fought? I am so worried. What else can I do? If you want me to say, just look ahead. I like to practice martial arts, so I practice martial arts. I like to practice soldiers, so I go to practice soldiers every day. If you want to do business, then do it. In the future, if you want to take the imperial examination, go for it. Anyway, you have been reading books, you are smart, and you will never be worse than others. If you don't want to take the exam, forget it. Follow me, if not go out and play when you are happy, and come back when you are happy. How simple things make you think too complicated." Fan Zijian frowned and said, "You have to focus on something. How can you grab the beard and eyebrows?" Qi Heiran tilted his head and asked, "Why not?" "That's what I did." Fan Zijian choked for a moment, and said, "What's the matter? You can practice martial arts while you are training soldiers, and it doesn't take long, and you also leave half of the military training to the general manager of the battalion. You ran to Chinggutun more and more diligently." Qi Heiran stared at him. "This military training is the job of Mr. Ying Qian. I just need to watch and make no mistakes. Why should I keep watching? I want to be a general, not an instructor." Fan Zijian was silent for a moment, then thoughtful. Qi Heiran had already muttered, "Don't you have a lot of time? Leave the business of the rabbits to the steward below, and you don't have to go south with the convoy. When you come back, you can listen to the report and check the books. If there is no problem, then it's over. The 5th Battalion, there is a big brother staring at the materials, no one will miss me, and there are experience accounts below, and the warehouse head guards, so you just go to see it every once in a while, and the rest of the time is not used to do your own business. Chi-Heiran looked at him suspiciously. You don't want to study, so you deliberately find an excuse to skip class. Fan Zijian rolled his eyes at him, and said, you thought I was you. However, his heart suddenly became clear, and he stared at Chi-Heiran and thought, what a fool is blessed with a fool.